Sophie had been working at Café Luminous for 3 years, serving coffee and pastries with a warm smile. She loved the rhythm of the cafe, the chatter of customers, the clinking of cups, and the small connections she made every day. But lately, things had changed. The new manager, Vincent, was harsh and unforgiving. No matter how careful Sophie was, he seemed determined to find a reason to humiliate her. That afternoon, the cafe was busier than ever. Sophie moved quickly between tables, balancing trays loaded with drinks and food. Her hands were steady, her mind focused, but in the chaos, a slip was inevitable. Carrying a tray of iced coffees to a family's table, she misjudged the counter edge. One glass toppled, spilling across the tiles and her apron. The crash drew every eye in the cafe. I'm so sorry," Sophie stammered, bending to clean up the mess. A few customers offered to help, but Vincent didn't wait. He stormed over, his face twisted in anger. "What did I tell you about being careless?" he shouted. "I've had enough of your mistakes. Pack your things. You're fired! Leave now!" Sophie's cheeks burned with humiliation. The cafe went silent, all eyes on her as she stood frozen. She wanted to disappear, but she grabbed her few personal items, a notebook, pen, and a small gold pendant her late grandmother had given her. It was the only thing that brought her comfort. Outside, Sophie sank onto a bench, her body trembling. She touched the pendant, feeling its familiar warmth and letting it remind her that she wasn't completely alone. The street bustled with people, but she felt invisible, swallowed by the sting of embarrassment and the weight of the unfair firing. Tears threatened to fall, but Sophie blinked them back. She refused to let Vincent's cruelty define her. For 3 years she had worked hard, done her best, and been faithful to her job. Losing it in such a public, humiliating way was painful, but she knew this wasn't the end. Clutching the pendant, Sophie whispered to herself, "This is just the beginning." Despite the fear and shame, a spark of hope remained. She stood up, ready to face the uncertain world outside, unaware that this terrible day would soon lead to an unexpected encounter that could change her life forever. Sophie sat on the cold bench outside the cafe, trying to calm her racing heart. The city hummed around her, cars honking, people rushing past, but she felt trapped in her own world of humiliation and self-doubt. Her fingers traced the delicate gold pendant hanging around her neck. It was small, simple, and engraved with her grandmother's initials. To anyone else, it might have seemed ordinary, but to Sophie, it was priceless. It was a piece of her family, a symbol of love, guidance, and resilience. As she absently fiddled with the pendant, a sleek black car pulled up beside her. The window rolled down, revealing a sharply dressed man with piercing eyes and an expression of surprise. "Excuse me," he said, his voice calm yet urgent. "That pendant, it belongs to my family. Where did you get it?" Sophie froze. The man's gaze was intense, almost as if he could see right into her soul. It was my grandmother's," she replied cautiously. "She gave it to me before she passed away. I've had it for years." The man studied her closely, then smiled faintly. "This design is very rare. It was stolen from my family decades ago. How it ended up with you, I can't believe it." Sophie's pulse quickened. The pendant, which had always been a personal treasure, suddenly carried a history she had never imagined. "Would you come with me?" he asked. "I need someone I can trust to help with something very important." Despite her exhaustion and lingering embarrassment, Sophie sensed sincerity in his voice. Something about him made her feel safe. Hesitantly, she nodded, standing and following him to the car. As they drove through the city, the man introduced himself as Mr. Aldridge, a billionaire collector of rare heirlooms. He explained that the pendant had been missing for years, and its recovery was deeply meaningful to him. Sophie listened, stunned by the twist of fate. The very thing she had clung to for comfort in her lowest moment, the pendant, had become the reason she was being noticed, valued, and trusted. Sophie realized that life could change in a single moment. One minute, she had been fired and humiliated. The next, she was being given an opportunity that could transform everything. Her heart, which had felt so heavy and hopeless, began to stir with cautious excitement. For the first time that day, Sophie allowed herself a small smile. The pendant, a simple gift from her grandmother, had led her to something unexpected, an encounter that might open doors she had never dreamed of. Sophie followed Mr. Aldridge into a sleek, glass-walled office that overlooked the city. Everything about the space screamed wealth and refinement: polished marble floors, rare artwork on the walls, and shelves filled with antiques and heirlooms. Sophie felt a mixture of awe and nervousness. She had never imagined herself in a place like this, far removed from the small cafe where she had just been humiliated. "Please have a seat," Mr. Aldridge said, gesturing toward a leather chair. Sophie sat, clutching her pendant tightly. Mr. Aldridge examined it carefully, holding it up to the light. "This pendant isn't just valuable, it's part of my family's history. But more importantly," he continued, turning toward Sophie, "I see qualities in you that go beyond the pendant." Sophie blinked in surprise. "Qualities?" she asked. "Patience, attention to detail, resilience, and integrity," Mr. Aldridge explained. "Your story, the way you handled yourself outside the cafe despite everything, shows me someone I can trust. I need an assistant to help manage my private collection of heirlooms, cataloging, organizing, and ensuring their safety. I believe you're perfect for this role." Sophie's heart pounded. She had never considered herself special or important. She had spent years working in a cafe, feeling invisible and overlooked. And now, a billionaire was offering her an opportunity she could have only dreamed of. I don't know what to say," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Say yes," he replied gently. "I can teach you everything you need to know. But I need someone honest, hardworking, and careful. I see all of that in you." As Sophie processed his words, a sense of hope she hadn't felt in months began to blossom. The pendant, a simple family gift, had not only connected her to her past, but had also opened the door to a new future. The humiliation of losing her cafe job seemed distant now, replaced by a thrilling possibility she hadn't imagined. "Okay," she said finally, a smile breaking across her face. "I'll do it." Mr. Aldridge nodded, clearly pleased. "Good. Welcome aboard, Sophie. Let's get started immediately." For the first time in what felt like forever, Sophie felt recognized, not for a mistake, but for who she truly was. The pendant around her neck shimmered softly, a reminder that sometimes the smallest, most cherished things can lead to the greatest opportunities. She realized that her life was about to change in ways she could never have imagined, and she was ready to embrace it. Sophie's first day at Mr. Aldridge's office felt surreal. She moved carefully among shelves filled with priceless artifacts, jewelry, paintings, and heirlooms that told stories spanning centuries. Mr. Aldridge guided her through the cataloging process, explaining each piece's history and significance. Sophie listened attentively, her nerves gradually replaced by excitement and determination. At first, the work was overwhelming. Each item required meticulous care, detailed records, and a deep understanding of its value. But Sophie quickly discovered that the patience and focus she had developed during her years as a waitress gave her an unexpected advantage. She organized the collections efficiently, noticed details others might miss, and handled each object with care. Mr. Aldridge watched her with growing admiration. "Your grandmother would be proud," he said one afternoon, noticing the way Sophie treated each piece as if it were a treasure. "You have a rare combination of skill and heart." Sophie smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. The hardships she had faced, especially the humiliating firing, now seemed like stepping stones that had prepared her for this moment. Over the following weeks, Sophie grew more confident. She learned about the provenance of rare artifacts, how to handle delicate items, and even the business of acquisitions and sales. Mr. Aldridge trusted her increasingly. Seeking her opinion on important decisions, she realized that her life had transformed in ways she never imagined. What had once been despair and hopelessness now became purpose and pride. One evening, Sophie paused and touched her pendant. It had brought her from the depths of humiliation to this incredible opportunity. She understood that sometimes the smallest, most personal treasures could change everything. A simple family heirloom had not only connected her to her past, but had opened doors to a future full of promise. Sophie smiled as she looked around the office, no longer feeling small or invisible. She had been recognized not for her mistakes, but for her character, her dedication, and her integrity. The cafe job, the public embarrassment, it all felt like a distant memory, a necessary challenge that had led her to this incredible turning point. For the first time in a long time, Sophie felt truly seen, appreciated, and hopeful. The pendant rested against her chest, a constant reminder of the journey she had endured and the bright future she had earned. She knew now that life could change in an instant, and sometimes the universe rewarded patience, kindness, and resilience in the most unexpected ways. Sophie was ready to embrace every new opportunity that lay ahead, knowing that this was just the beginning of a life full of possibilities.